So I've been thinking about rejection and how this fear of rejection can hold us back, whether we're artists who are sharing our art online or we're in a relationship or a friendship, we have an argument, we have a fight with someone, they say things, we say things, and we feel hurt, we feel abandoned, or we feel rejected. And this can hold us back. It can make us not want to put our art out there if people have said mean things or we've been criticized. In terms of relationships, it can cause these false assumptions within us where we think about what other people are thinking, what they said, what they meant. And so when we come across this feeling of rejection within us, we often ignore it entirely, or it can come out as an outburst at someone else. So we don't often have tools or healthy ways to deal with this fear of rejection. We don't often have the right mindset to deal with rejection. So one thing we can do is to hold our problems lightly. Now what this means is, in an emotional context, suppose you had a fight with someone said something, take a pause entirely from the situation, from this person, let them know, we'll come back to them, we'll speak to them later, but we need some space, we need some time, because in the moment the conversation's heated up, we want to say 10 things more and the situation just gets worse. We can say things we don't mean, which are hard to take back. Just take a break, take your mind off it. If it's too heavy, if it's really weighing on your mind, vent to another friend, speak to someone about it, journal, whatever makes you feel good, or just distract yourself. So distraction is good for the short term. It's not an effective long-term strategy for dealing with our emotions, but in the moment, do whatever feels good to you. Watch a film, read a book, speak to someone else, go out, meet a friend for coffee, do whatever helps to get your mind off it. And now, in context of work or in context of making art, sharing art, let's say we put a piece of art out there, we made a painting, we wrote a story, we shared it. It did not get the appreciation that we wanted, it did not get the positive feedback that we looked forward to. So, one thing that helps here is to again take a pause. But another thing that helps is to view this one situation in the present that is triggering this feeling of rejection within us, to view it on a scale, on the scale of life, on the scale of how much progress we've already made on our work, how far we've come from where we were when we started, on the scale of life, out of all of the wins and losses we're going to have forever, this one event where we have received negative feedback or criticism is very small on the scale of life. So what that does is that really reduces the problem at hand that we are giving so much time and so much importance to, but it reduces the impact of this situation. And then even in the context of emotions, of course, even in the context of our relationships, we can see the bigger picture, we can see the larger scale. The depth and magnitude of this relationship that we have is more important than this one argument, this one fight. So viewing things in their entirety, in the larger scale, in the larger picture, that helps to reduce the impact of the current feelings that we're wrestling with. And also in the case of art or in the case of our work, it always helps to detach ourselves a little bit from what we've created, because we will not just make one thing throughout our lives. We will not just have one good idea or create one perfect piece of art, one perfect story. So to detach ourselves from this present situation is really important, because then we can tell ourselves that this is not the end. So we don't have to hold things that tightly. We should accept our feelings, we should sit with our feelings. We can always journal on them, reflect on them. But the important thing is to come back and sort of see how this present situation can lead to our growth and not leave us fixed in the past. This brings us to the growth mindset. So now the growth mindset is where you have a mindset of accepting challenges, almost welcoming rejection, criticism with open arms, to be so okay with that and to just accept it as a part of learning, as a part of life, versus staying in a fixed mindset where we feel rejected, all of these strong emotions come up, and then we can't move forward and we stay stewing in this situation and whatever is causing these feelings. And so we stay fixed and we don't see the situation as an opportunity for growth. So one part of having a growth mindset is to really be okay with feedback, to really welcome feedback, because only through feedback can we open ourselves to different perspectives. We can get different opinions on a piece of art that we've created, or in a relationship, people can talk to us about their problems, or if we have gone wrong somewhere. We should be open enough to handle criticism sometimes, because no one's perfect, we all make mistakes, and that's completely okay. And the next thing is that it's important to detach ourselves, because what defines us is not that we made this one mistake, or that we yelled at someone whom we love, or that we made a bad piece of art. It's not that particular situation that defines us, but it is how we respond to that situation, how we grow from that. And so it's about, what do you do after that? How do you respond to the situation once your feelings have settled down and once you're feeling well enough to respond to the situation? And one thing that helps if we're feeling very hurt or feeling very angry. So I read this quote in this book called Notes to Myself by Hugh Prather. And so he asks himself this question: am I going to choose to respond to this part of myself or to that part of myself? And now you can fit this into literally any situation, any context. When you're feeling anxious, are you going to respond to the part of yourself that tells you that everything's going to go wrong, that you're not going to be able to do this? Or are you going to choose to respond to what you can, the present moment, and work from there? And now, when you're feeling rejected, are you going to stew in that rejection, or are you gonna tell yourself that this is human, this is natural, this is a part of life, this is what everyone goes through throughout life, and we're gonna learn through this and we're gonna keep going? And so now is the time to act. Now that we've taken some distance from the situation, now that we've distracted ourselves, then we've accepted our emotions, we've had some time to reflect on it, now is when you act. So here you could journal, you could ask yourself, okay, if it's a fight in a relationship, what does the other person think? What if I step in their shoes for a minute and view this from another perspective? What would someone else say about this situation? Or has this sort of a situation happened before? How have I dealt with it in the past? So ask yourself these kinds of questions, just to get your thoughts down, just reflect on what has happened and how you're feeling and what the situation was, what it made you feel, and what is the next step that you can take to go from here. So again, if it was a fight, an argument, now is when you can bring up your feelings with this person. And this step is really important to act, because we want to close the loop. We don't want to sit with these feelings and then later on carry them on to another fight. We want to close this loop. So at this point, once you've reflected, you can now communicate with this person. So instead of what would have happened earlier, which would have been a reaction to what the argument was, now this is your time to have a response. So you've collected your thoughts, your feelings, and now you can communicate with your partner, with your friend, whoever it is. And in the context of work, in the context of, say, making art, there's going to be so many times in our lives where we're not going to be proud of what we've made, where other people respond poorly to what we thought was a really great piece. If you feel like there are some gaps in your knowledge and your experience, identify those skills and then work on building those skills. But the other thing is, sometimes it's just okay to not do well at the job or not make the perfect piece of art. Sometimes it's just a matter of personal taste. Sometimes it's okay that someone said something just because they have a different taste, not because what you made was bad. The other thing is, if your art is not where you want it to be right now, or you're not doing as good as you wanted to do at your job right now, some things just take time, some things just take patience, and you cannot get to the level where you want to get without that time passing, without that practice happening. This is where detachment from the situation or the person or the partner or the friend or the work or the job or the art, this is where that detachment from these things helps, because you as a whole, you're bigger than the part of you that is in a relationship with this friend or this partner. You as a whole is bigger than your job. You as a whole is bigger than this one piece of art that you've created. Just remember that sense of independence is very important, so that even if you feel rejected in these spheres of life, you know that as a whole, you're so much more than them. So to wrap up, rejection is normal, but it's not something to carry forward. So definitely distract yourself, take a break, distract yourself, take a break from the situation, from the person. But it is important to pay attention to our feelings, to accept those feelings, to manage those feelings, to regulate our emotions. And hopefully this video helps with that. All right, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye.